So welcome to tonight's yin practice, and it's quite warm outside, so we've already got quite a bit of heat. So I thought we'd work with some fundamentals and unpick how we can use props with our fundamental yin poses. But first I thought we'd just start with the breath. A good place to start, helps us connect. So just find a comfy seat. You could be sitting in Sukhasana, but equally butterfly or hero if you want to sit in hero. But wherever you are, we want to start thinking about that edge. So when we're seated or when we're in a pose, that edge is just that point at which we feel a sensation that's okay. But if we go past that edge, we start to tingle or we start to hurt. So we just need to be aware of that in our practice. So we're going to take a moment to connect. And in yin, that breath just remains soft. You can take a soft ujjayi if you wish, but it's very much central to our yoga practice, our health, our physical state, our mental state. And our natural breath is smooth and unhindered. That expansive quality of the inhale. And the exhalation, the letting go. And just allowing that relaxation in the breath actually allows us naturally to unwind. And we're actually going to start in a very simple pose today, but we're going to adjust it for ourselves. And remember that we can bring any of the yin knowledge to our yang practice, and that's why I like this, because we slow down and we think about our technique and our posture. So actually coming to balasana, I want you to think about how you are on the mat, whether your hips are going towards your feet. So we've got options here. We've got options to take the knees wider. We've got options to roll a blanket and just pop it, just supporting underneath the back. If there's any need for a little bit of height, you can just pop it behind the heels. You might need to roll it a couple of times. And we're trying to get to a place where we're flattening our feet, so we're not giving ourselves cramp. We're pushing the hips back towards the heels. But what we also want to do is make sure our head is not just floating. So if we're raising our heels, we really need to be raising our head. So you can use a blanket or block for this. And while you're getting comfy, this is about opening up the spine, opening up the back of the body. So we're looking at kind of the meridians. So you're looking at the urinary and the bladder line here and the digestive system here. So just allowing yourself a point where if you're raising your head off the mat, you're not going to allow your shoulders to dip. So you might need to just support gently with the arms, but allowing yourself to sink back into this pose. And then allowing the breath not just to kind of fill the lungs, but breathe into the side of the body. So we're inhaling into the torso, expanding the ribs, and then exhaling. And then just let that ebb and flow of the breath just work its magic. Now, if you feel any tingling in the shoulders at all, that's not the best sensation. So soften the shoulders or bring the hands across the mat and bring the head to the arms. What that's an indicator of is something that we can trap a nerve with, so we don't really want to let things tingle. If you've got a bolster of any sort, you can add a support to the chest. And keep that breath soft and long, and start bringing the breath so that it's even. And if it's a challenge with those feet, you can just gently roll that blanket if you need, or gently adjust the toes. But wherever you are, just taking a moment here, remembering the point of the pose, which is that opening of the back and the spine. And then we're gently going to move. We just walk our hands towards us, and we're going to come back up to seated. And here we're going to play with a dragonfly pose. Now, I'm really keen on keeping the hips supported and the spine kind of engaged so that we can lengthen it. So I'm going to use the blanket. There's a little bit of fussing in the yin. I'm going to use that blanket just to elevate my hips. And then I'm going to bring myself to legs apart. So now this also, with the gentle kind of blanket underneath, gives my pelvis a little bit of a tilt. If you've got a big block, that's great. If you have a yoga wheel, it's quite useful for dragon pose. If your hamstrings are slightly tight or limited, you can support under the knees. So just remember that. And you can use a block. Remember, the block doesn't let us sink into the pose. If you've got an injury, the block is better. Or a couple of cushions, or you might just be allowing the legs to just be supported by the mat. And in dragonfly, we also need to be aware of hypermobility. So again, you can just support a blanket under those knees if you need. And this is a pose where we're supporting the body. Now, traditionally, we can come down and we can just gently inhale, lift the body, and then exhale, fold gently, and allow ourselves to be supported by our hands. However, I do quite like my yoga wheel, and I can actually use the yoga wheel to allow me to support my head. It's especially good if you're not wanting to completely do a forward fold and you've got a wee bit of sciatica going on. Gives me a bit more height, but I'm still supported. And wherever you are, you can have a play with that yoga wheel. You can drape as well and stretch through the back body too. So it's about support, whatever props you've got. So adjusting. And remember, that breath is that barometer as well. So an indicator, if you start to hold your breath, then it might be that you need to come out of the pose gently. And just allowing your body just to melt into these poses. And really be aware of any sensation in your body. Stretching is feeling fine, but pinching or a kind of tingling starts to be something we want to avoid. So just watch that in yin. And our feet, in yang yoga we would probably pull the toes towards us, but we just allow softness. And if you feel that your breath's quite tight today, it's quite hot, just allow a soft cooling breath. Just through the nose. And just allow the breath to come out through the mouth. And these yin poses, dragonfly, the butterfly, caterpillar, they're all forward folds effectively. So we need to be really mindful of them if we've got any lower back issues. And don't take yourself right down if you have. We're going to come back up gently. And then just take a moment just to open across the chest. Even take the hands gently behind you. And just take a stretch all the way through, maybe squeezing the shoulder blades together. And then coming to butterfly. So we're going to bring the soles of the feet together, the knees wide. Now in yin, remember that our butterfly is actually our feet are slightly away from us. So there's two things here. If your feet are in, you're activating your adductors. If your feet are slightly away from you, think about your thighs. And again, if you've got blocks or cushions, you can prop your butterfly up here. Sciatica, and I'm always aware of this one with us home working. You can do this posture on your back. So if you've got any lower back issues, come to reclined butterfly. Or against the wall, take this pose against the wall. And goodness, what meridians are we looking at in butterfly? Well, opening the kidney, I guess the gallbladder and urinary tract, so it's quite low still. Supporting hands if you need to on the outside of the knees. And you can, if you want, gently draw yourself into a forward fold here. And again, support the head, but that may be too much, may not, might be nice. Taking a moment. And breathing into this pose. You can activate gently the belly. So as we inhale and exhale, draw the belly in just very slightly. We're not locking, we're just activating. And then we're going to take a counter pose here. So we're going to just take the hands to the outside of the knees, draw the knees up towards us and take the feet gently out to the side. Hands come round the back and we're going to windshield wiper our legs. So just very gently, just dipping the knee, turning the hip, and just allowing yourself just to release any tension in the lower back. It's quite nice for stretching through the hip as well. You get a little twist in there. Lots of things you can do. Remember that slowness of yin. Allowing the muscles to relax allows us to then work on those connective tissues. And that's where we start to strengthen as well. Let's lengthen. And then just come back to center. We're going to come to all fours. Now, it's a bit like Marmite, this one. There's always Marmite yoga poses, isn't there? Shoelace. And to get into shoelace, sometimes we need a little bit of height on the hip at the back. So I'm going to take a block. Yoga ball's probably too high for this one. I'm going to come into all fours. And actually, it's rather a nice time while we're here, just to take a moment, cat-cow. Just flexing that spine. Keep lightness in those wrists. So let's work on the spine here. Working on that back. Gentle breath. Back and forwards. And then come to neutral spine. And what we're going to do is we're going to cross one leg over the other, basically. So we're going to take one in front of the other, and however you shuffle this, the knee comes across the side and a knee just goes and tucks in between. Now, watch when you sit back, because sometimes people's hips kind of start to complain. That's where that block comes in. You can just prop yourself up in a block if you wish. And shoelace is a bit like cow face, I guess, for the legs. And we can add cow face if we wish, but just make sure you've got support under the sitting bones. Folded blanket will also do it as well. And we can extend the bottom leg if you wish out the front, if you're just wanting to do one of these. So you can actually soften this pose by just extending that bottom leg and just allowing a bit more of a stretch. So you can play with that just to see what suits you. Now we've got options, and you'll know my yin yoga is just like Goldilocks. What suited baby bear didn't suit mummy bear and daddy bear. So you might just be quite happy here, thinking actually about that opening and lengthening of the spine, and that's actually releasing that spine and the hips. Or you might want a bit extra. The extra we can bring, I want to say bring to the party, is you can bring the forehead down again. Yoga wheel is just a brilliant prop here. Solid. It allows me to find that edge. It gives me height. Hands do the same. Or go one step more and we come into cow face. So right leg on top, so my left arm's going to come over. If you can catch, that's great. If not, use a scarf or a strap. Just hold in the back. Wherever you are, just making sure that you're not just pushing the body too much. Take note of the breath, that breath being that barometer. And if you feel any tingling in the arms at all, gently release and just move. You can take the hands maybe to the soles of the feet and connect. And we're not using any bandhas or locking at all in yin, but we are aware of our breath and that real support for our spine. So you can still use a gentle inhale to activate the core. And it's a good practice because then when we bring it into yang, it becomes something we do without thinking. Might be a good opportunity as well to bring a little movement and just maybe gently dropping the chin to the chest and then the nose and just circling back and forwards, little half moon. Especially if you've been doing anything that requires kind of upper body. And dog walking. I think the dog took me for a walk this evening. Which is about right. And we're going to come out of shoelace really carefully, come into a counter pose and then come to the other side. So there's two that we can use here. We can use the windshield wiper, or we can come back to that all fours, just moving the block. And we can come to a little deer pose. So the leg that was over now goes behind. And I just draw myself into a little deer here. So I'm just stretching. If that's too much on that back hip, which it might be, that counter pose is just again that windshield wiper, back and forwards. And you might just want to bring gentle movement into your yin. Depends on your mood. But wherever you are, we're going to come to shoelace on the other side. And to do that, we do that really slowly. So transitions, really important. That's why I like my patterned mats when I'm doing yin. I've decided, because they give me a focal point. Lovely. So opposites now. So coming into that all fours, is shuffling a knee across and then bringing the one that was on top just behind. Like everything in yoga, right hand is not the same as left hand. Left hand is not the same as the right hand side, and you might feel totally different in shoelace on the other side. Absolutely fine. So I'm just giving myself height again, and my left leg is now on top. So I'm going to use my right arm in cow face and extend that right arm, working with the breath. And you might not use cow face very long, but it might just be nice to add to the pose. And all things being equal, make sure that if you're practicing on your own as well, that your time that you're on your right hand side or left hand side is equal. Lengthening the chin to the chest is quite a nice thing to do in shoelace and cow face. And again, just thinking about that breath those sensations in the body. So if you get to that point where you're feeling that you just need to move the arms, absolutely fine. Yin, traditionally, yes, you can hold the poses for as long as you require in stillness, but not at the detriment to you and your body. So there's a balance. And then if you're just starting to feel those sensations heighten, just take a moment with the breath. Just holding a little longer. And when we come out of shoelace, we're going to be really mindful and unwind our body. It's really all about the legs and hips and shoelace. So we're going to unfold and take a moment here. And even maybe come off your perch. And even take a moment before you do the counter pose. Maybe dropping legs back and forwards really slowly. And then while we're here, we're going to come all the way down to our backs. Always time for roll down. And just come into that constructive rest pose. And you can bring the feet as wide as the yoga mat if you wish, and bring the knees together. And just allow your spine just to settle a moment on the mat. Feel the feet really grounding on the yoga mat. And you should be able to feel that even though you've really hardly done what we would traditionally class as a yoga practice, yang practice, you should be able to feel that you've worked. Take a moment here just to allow the spine to settle and the whole body to feel really supported. And then our next pose is going to be one that's on our front. However, if you're feeling the need to stay on your back, we're going to come to a sleeping swan. So if you know that that is something that aggravates your hips or your back, and it's easier for you to do this as a reverse swan, remember, it's a good place to show you that you can use a block under the foot that's extended and allow the opposite leg to kind of come across at the ankle point and get yourself into a place where you feel centered. And that's a really good option. You can take a bind if you wish, but that's a really good option if you have any kind of lower back issues. If not, you can join me, and I'm going to just gently roll up the mat, and I'm going to come onto all fours. So that reverse pigeon is a really good option, and we bring it down to the yin by connecting with the foot and the block. Sleeping swan, I guess pigeon is the active pose. We're going to draw our left foot forwards, our knee forwards, but we're going to use a block on the hip, so really supporting this pose. And be gentle. This is a gentle back bend, so be gentle on your own body. So in yin, we're supporting everything and just allowing that hip to be supported so we can still keep that center and that midline. Very similar, I guess, to your pigeon. And with Sleeping Swan, we're going to come all the way down to the mat. So traditionally, I guess, pigeon, you would walk the shin in parallel with the mat and you would make your way into a pigeon here, but soften it and bring maybe a blanket to the forehead or blocks. Yoga wheel might keep you a little upright if you want to drape. Actually, on a yoga wheel you could actually prop yourself quite nicely. If you want to keep it fairly high, I have to say that's giving me a lot of support on my upper body. It's allowing me to just support gently with the hands, and it's making sure that I'm not keeping too much of a back bend options. Or you can just gently come down and allow yourself to settle. So Sleeping Swans are really one of the poses that you can start to pinch quite quickly. So just be aware of that, and you might need that little bit of height so that you're not pinching onto that hip point. So wherever you are, find your Goldilocks chair, and if it's just not for you, then you've got an option of reverse pigeon, or you could almost come into a thread the needle as well, on all fours and bringing a hand under and take a twist as an option. And remember to come back to that breath. Breath in yin is soft. It's still supportive. And I'm always very careful in Sleeping Swan. So it comes back to how you feel in a pose. I'm careful because I know that it will start pinching quite quickly for me, and that I then like to do a wee counter pose. And for me that is to come back up and bring all fours to the mat, into that neutral spine. Take a moment here with cat-cow, and as I do, just sink back into just a little child's pose. Opening the back, inhaling into the whole of that torso, and exhaling the whole of the breath. Before I come back up, and the opposite side. So we're now going to support on the opposite side. So bring yourself back to all fours. Take the opposite leg forwards. Again, take your option if you're in reverse pigeon. Take the option if you want a little bit of height. I actually quite like that. I think I'm going to try that. Giving myself some support with the arms gently. Guess you could use a bolster as well, which would be a little lower. But we're all in a bit of a state of flux here in this house at the moment, with moving out and packing for kiddies, so I'm afraid my bolsters are somewhere. Might look tidy this side. Once it's not tidy the other side. It's me being in the lounge again. So wherever you are, just really enjoying the stretch. If it gets to the point you're not actually enjoying it, then you might have just got to that point where it's just to be a bit too much. And just remembering that breath. And then we're going to come onto our back for a bit. I have to say, I could stay here for quite a long time on this yoga wheel. In fact, if you have one, and I'll pop that post online, it's quite nice just to stretch into the back leg as well. You can do that, just lifting a little bit of height into this, just take a little stretch. And then gently, while I'm still playing, I'll pop that away. We'll come to our back. So I'm going to come to happy baby. You can use a strap, and I'm also going to use my blanket. But this is a yin practice, so softness on the back is a really nice thing to have. So I'm going to take myself all the way down to the mat and just allow myself to just support that spine again. You can even take the feet out to the side of the mat, come to that constructive rest, yin pose. These are just supported together. And then you can take a full happy baby if you wish, or you can take a one-legged happy baby. So I'm gently going to bring my foot towards me, and I'm going to push that foot into the instep. So I've got my hand inside my foot. It might just be that I've got one leg extended, or just gently on the mat, or it might be that I've got both feet. You can use a strap if you are finding it tricky to get to the soles. Such a ladylike pose, but I tell you what, it's really good for you. And see where this takes you. And I'm pushing gently the foot into the hand, but I'm allowing a little bit of weight as well on the hip. And you might find that you can stretch a leg. Just gently stretch the back of the leg. So it's kind of quite an active pose, really. I do like this one. And then the opposite side. Just allowing yourself to explore. So if we do this in a yang practice, it's often quite dynamic. But in yin, you can take a moment to think, okay, I just need to adjust my hand slightly. And sometimes actually you can take two fingers onto the toes. You can take a little kind of bind here if you wish. But explore where the hand feels better. Traditionally, it might go in one place. Physiologically, it might not suit you. So I would just have a wee kind of play. And maybe even a rock. And then cross the ankles and just take a moment here. If you have softness on your mat, just take a moment just to gently rock, really slowly. Let's do this with control. Activating that core. Really carefully. It's a lot of lower body work tonight. And use that core to draw you up as well. Having a wee bit of a play back and forwards. And I've just got a really lovely active pose as well. So we're going to come into dragon. And if you've got your blanket, that's grand, that can go under the knee, although I've doubled my yoga mats tonight. If you've got a yoga wheel or a block, you can use that, or a bolster on the leg. So there's lots and lots of different options. This, I guess, is the most yang of the yin poses. Coming back to those all fours, and I'm going to step my leg forwards. Now, you've got lots of options here as well. We can walk that foot to the side of the mat and just roll onto the side of the foot, or we'll keep it fairly firm. Blocks and bolsters, we can take that knee back. That's going to create more heat. The yoga wheel can work here, almost like your bolster, but you can take height and you can take a stretch. So this is a real stretch through that back leg, very active pose. And also think about where you are with pushing away from the mat, activating the core. Don't allow your hands to collapse and hold the weight. Allow your whole body to start to work into this pose. So I'm pushing into the heel. If your knee is on the mat, absolutely fine. Can be supported by a cushion or a bolster, but I'm not collapsing into that hip. I'm allowing myself just to work the whole body. Remember, you can take this down to the mat if you wish. You might use a block, or you might not need the block. You might just want to come down to the mat. Wherever you are, find a place where you can just stop for a moment. I'm going to come back to that yoga wheel. And just, again, think about what your body is feeling, the positions that you're in. Where's the tightness? How can you change if it's a negative feeling? So if your wrists are pinching, what can you do to support them? Maybe it's actually coming up to spider hands for a bit. Maybe it's coming to the forearms. Maybe it's engaging the core more. So it's really analysing what you feel in a pose. And that's why I like yin, it gives you that time. And keep working with your breath here. Can use your fists as well. I've forgotten that one actually. Can actually use your fists. It's not particularly yoga-like, is it? But it does the job if it's stressing your wrists. And then again, we're going to take a wee counter pose here and gently come out of this. So moving props gently and moving your body gently. We're going to come to child's pose. Again, you can roll this blanket, place it under, just under the ankle bit, on between the ankles and the mat. And that can just give you a little bit of support on the feet. And then gently dropping. You might want to bring height to this pose if you've got props, by just stacking the hands, forearms, and bring the head to the mat. And again, that breath into the whole torso, opening the back. I'm just going to take another deep breath here before we move to the other side. gently, we're going to take our props and we're going to adjust. Moving ourselves into position, remembering what side. That's interesting. I wanted to go to the other side. So coming and finding whatever you use, if you use blocks, if you use a wheel, if you anything, come into the yoga position on the other side, dragon. Adjusting. And finding a little stretch, a place where you're comfy. Don't forget that core. So we're not locking it. And I keep coming back to this. Yin is soft, but we are aware and it still helps us. Exploring the pose here. It's actually quite nice to hold a block as well. That sometimes to hold the sides of the block. That sometimes can just take the stress off the wrist as well. Just taking a moment back and forwards, and then just that stillness in the body. Still activating muscles here very slightly, so this is quite, as I said, yang. And then we're going to very gently in a minute move from this pose. And just draw our knees all the way together at the back of the mat. And just sink into Balasana. Just take a stretch into Balasana. Inhaling and exhaling. And then we're going to come all the way to the mat. We're going to just look at some gentle back bends. Now, I do like softness on my mat, so I'm going to come and put my lovely Kabuki outdoor market blanket, very soft. And I'm going to come forwards, and I'm going to come to Egyptian lion pose, one of my favourites. And I'm going to just come down to the belly, rest on the floor. The forearms, pressing into those forearms creates that lengthening. And I need to keep my neck in alignment with the spine. So pressing into the forearms, neck in alignment, softening the gaze, maybe even just drawing the chin gently down. Feeling that stretch through the belly as well. If it's too much, bring the arms forward. And in the yin practice, we would soften the legs and we would soften the glutes. Still push the pelvis into the mat, but there's a general sense of ease. Do you know, it's all happening in Kabuki tonight. It's a helicopter now. It's been a very, very odd day here, I have to say. We had sirens and all sorts. Not conducive to yin. And then just allow that body just to really feel like it's sinking into the mat. But do you know what? Because you're pressing your forearms, if you're pushing that mat away, got a lot of upper body work going on here. Now remember, seal is deeper, so if you wish to go deeper, then we will move our palms wide, straightening our arms. We're going to spin our hands out very gently, And going to keep the arms into the body, as it were. So shoulders away from the ears. So pushing the shoulders. There's softness still. And we want space in the upper back. So if you've got hypermobile elbows, maybe just take a little bit of softness into the elbows. And again, keeping the neck in line with the spine. You can stay in Egyptian lion if you wish, or you can work a little more in seal. If you wish to bring kind of the yang to the pose, then it's pushing the legs, zipping through the legs. But if not, just leave softness. And then we're going to come all the way down to the mat, and we're going to just stack our forearms and just allow ourselves just to lengthen and let the spine just settle. So often between poses in yin, we come to a neutral pose too. And then before we take a relaxation, we're going to push all the way back up to all fours. Gently take a little melting heart pose. Again, watching the shoulders, you can bring an arm across you and rest. So we're really not wishing to push the shoulders too far to the mat. And we're just gently working in this pose tonight. We wouldn't want to push the shoulders really out of line anyway. You can, I guess, use props here if you wish. Just wondering if a yoga wheel actually kind of takes away a little bit of the pose. Bolster's probably better for this underneath the chest. Breathing again into this pose. And we're gently going to just stretch out the back, coming into little cat-cow. Back and forwards. Pausing if you need. And then we're going to come all the way to our backs. And we're going to just gently come all the way back down. Just a constructive rest pose. And then a supported bridge before we come to relaxation. So if you have a yoga block, that's great. I haven't tried this recently with a yoga wheel. I suspect you'd need to get quite high, and also you probably need to roll onto it. So supported bridge is probably best with a block here. Just getting that block just under the lower back, just in the right place. If you wish to take a deeper back bend, of course you can use your yoga wheel. You're probably going to be coming backwards into it rather than underneath you. And then just allow the bridge, just allow the body to kind of drape over the support. Really connecting with the soles of the feet. Feeling all the way through the core. And then moving the block, take a moment here. And we're going to come to a spine twist. You've got options again, lots of options. You can just do windshield wiper, you could stack the feet and drop the knee, or you can even, it's quite deep, but even take eagle legs and allow yourself to come into a gentle twist. If that's too much for you, you can stack the legs, maybe put a bolster between the knees. Wherever you are, the gaze can come away if you wish, and you can draw that supine twist to the opposite side. Allowing the lower back, just some gentle TLC. And then wherever you are, coming back either to a traditional Shavasana, you might wish to take a reclined butterfly, or you can even just stay in that constructive yin pose. Wherever you are, getting yourself comfy and taking a moment, just allow yourself to settle. Allowing the body to feel heavy, to feel grounded. For the breath to gently return just to a natural rise and fall. And then very, very slowly, and if you're with me next week, we will take an extended relaxation in class, but just now, just taking a moment to roll onto your side. And take a moment to come into a seated position. With an inhale and exhale, hands to the heart, Anjali Mudra. Thank you very much for joining.